Hi, my name's Andre.
My name's Kamal.
My name is Dwayne.
So today we're going to be talking about myths surrounding race and providing evidence to debunk those myths. My myth is going to be about where certain race lives in the communities, what those communities look like. So I'm going to start my discussion with what do you guys think is the American dream?
Nice one family house, picket white fence,
Funny that you say
couple
that.
of kids and a dog. Driveway, long driveway.
I
Okay.
think we all probably have the same um, idea of what the American dream is to have a house, wife, kids, and a successful career in a neighborhood that's safe.
Absolutely. So when you say a safe neighborhood, what do you think of? How do you guys picture a safe neighborhood? What kind of people? What kind of, no?
Low crime rate. Nothing bad happens at all. All the neighbors know each other and get along.
I think that great neighborhoods usually have a lot of resources within them. So a lot of that comes from people that have, been able to be successful living in the same community. I think that they have a vested interest in making sure that the neighborhood's safe and that everything else is good, because if they have an ownership stake in that community, it makes sense for them to want to make sure that everything is good.
Right, absolutely. Yep. So with the good community comes good jobs and good income, tax revenue to keep that community like up and running. So the federal government implemented programs to make it easier for Americans to purchase homes. The problem with that is it has a discriminatory application process where similarly qualified non-whites or minorities are disqualified as opposed to the white American counterparts. And so when let's say when white people get approved for the process, they leave the inner city neighborhoods to the suburbs. And when they do leave to the suburbs, they take the good jobs that we're talking about and the booming businesses, stable businesses, and the tax revenue all with them to the new neighborhoods, and that causes the inner city neighborhoods they have lack of resources, and that's when the residents have to resort to crime and violence and drugs and stuff like that. So a lot of Americans blame minorities for high crime rates and the violence that goes on in these neighborhoods when it's not really the minority's fault. It's the majority's fault for leaving the neighborhood and taking their resources with them.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand. I know when you're in a community where it's not like the better off communities don't have crimes or violence, but
Right,
they
right.
have so many other resources around to really address those incidences where there are
Exactly.
crimes and violence, that it doesn't persist and doesn't keep going on. So I can totally understand why once all of those resources are gone, then crime starts to become rampant, and you can look around any community where people of a certain economic class have left, and once they leave, then everything else, spirals downward from there. So
Right, exactly. You hit it right on the money. And it's not only that minorities are surrounded by the violence and the gangs they're blamed for, which is unfortunate. It makes no sense.
I think some of that even plays into race too, because a lot of times, minorities aren't given the proper educational experiences to understand that they need to respect their credit and what that really looks like in the long term in terms
Absolutely.
of having some type of real economic power. You have to have credit, and we've always been pumped with images of immediate gratification. So for us, it's, if I get a credit card at 18, I'm going to buy some Jordans
Exactly.
versus building on my credit,
Right.
because I plan on buying a house in a couple of years. So,
Exactly. See,
And
and
to piggyback off of that, um, it does have a big part to do with race, because a lot of times people say what they are and what they get is passed down from generations that came before them. So as you were saying, with the people that were living in the city and moved out to the suburbs, they kept it within themselves, and now they have it in the suburbs. So when they have kids, it'll stay with their kids, and the people who were left in the city, it just their kids are already born into struggle. While the people who moved out into the suburbs, their kids are born into having the resources and everything, job opportunities and different opportunities. So it does have to do with generation and race.
yeah, no, absolutely. Success definitely does trickle down through generations. Success and the complete opposite of that. So the wealth gap, the 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 gap just gets bigger on both ends of the spectrum.
mhm.
But you guys already address my next point, which was a solution, educating minorities on the importance of building the credit and being able to buy that home to reach the American dream.
Yeah, man. I think that a lot of times they'll have more of a vested interest in your community when you own part of your community. Like, you won't spray paint on the side of a building that is yours or that is cousins of yours or just in your community. Period, because it brings the value down of your own home. So
Right,
no one
right.
wants to see their house go from being worth 300,000 to being worth 150,000. So that's why the neighborhoods where you see a bigger degree of home ownership, you see less crime and stuff like that.
Right.
Next, I'll be talking about race specifically for my topic, my myth. And I think that um, there's a lot of ways that people classify races, and everybody has their own interpretation of that. And I think that plays a lot into how resources are given out, how things are people are painted and viewed. Um, it'll be interesting to know what you guys feel like race makes up.
Um, I definitely do. Not to say that I try to make, not that I try to guess what people are, but when I see someone, I do associate certain appearances with certain races. You know, like certain features.
Mhm.
Um, for example, and it's funny, like the movie White Men Can't Jump. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the movie, but for those who aren't, um, they there's African American man and this white guy come up with a scheme to try to make up a couple bucks, and the white dude is a beast at basketball, but nobody, like when people see him, they don't think he's a ball player because he's white, hence the name White Men Can't Jump. Little do they know he's better than them on the court. So yeah, that's just the way some people associate features and abilities with.
Yeah, I mean, people oftentimes associate race with certain stereotypes, i.e., the
Right,
movie,
right.
and that's also it can be negative or positive,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of race has to do with that. I don't want to cut you off. I know you want to say something.
No, I was just gonna piggyback off of you guys. What you're saying, race plays a big part into definitely into America and our country, because race, without knowing, people segregate themselves. Like the first day, a lot of people go to school. They're unfortunately, but they'll go with people who look more like them or more people they are more accustomed to. So if you were to go in the lunchroom on like the first week of school, you'll see groups of people that are basically split off by races. You can have the Spanish people in one section with the black people in another section, the white people, the Asian people. Everybody will be in their own sections at first. It's just naturally the way we people are born and what they're accustomed to. So race plays a big part into segregating unconsciously.
Right, right.
I think when I think in terms of how race has been split up differently in different ways, and people have identified race differently throughout time. So back in the days, there were like three groups of people that people kind of grouped them up. You had the Mongoloid, which were Asian featured. They almost look like Eskimos, as well as the American Indians. They kind of had those same kind of features and tones. You had the Caucasoids, which were the people that came from around the Caucasus Mountain Range up into where it's currently Russia and Europe and all that. And then you had the Negroid race, which was in Africa and parts of Australia, the Aborigines from Australia, and a few other places. And I think that those were the initial ways that people broke down race, and it still kind of goes like that now. Even though you have people that segue, their ways out, a little bit, but it's still pretty much that right now. The thing about race with us in America is that we use race as numbers to propel how we, put certain resources certain places, and we also use it for data purposes. And data can be used negatively or positively. So race plays a big part in figuring out whether or not we're going to do something versus doing something else. And
Absolutely.
so prior to 1960, up until 1960, race was based on what the census people felt you looked like. And the funny thing about that is
Oh,
that I don't know if someone's Hispanic or white just by looking at them, or if you're Asian versus American Indian just by looking at
right.
you,
Just the
or
other day,
anything.
not to cut you out, just the other day, someone asked me if I was Moroccan. Like,
Exactly,
that's
exactly,
crazy.
exactly. Which would be considered African.
Right, right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Which would consider African. You know what I mean? Which is like, you can't. I mean, you are what you're considered. You know what I mean now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
in
absolutely.
1970, Congress, after a bunch of civil rights laws, decided that people can self-identify, and it's
Mm.
called self-identification of your race. So it didn't matter what we thought it's about what you consider yourself as, because I know some people that would say that they're white that might not feel like I might not feel like they're white, but
Right,
you know
right,
they've been
right.
allowed to do that, and it's always been a funny subject because someone can just automatically assume that you're white and then classify you based on that, but you might not be,
Mhm.
exactly that. Or, automatically assume that you're American Indian when in actuality you might be um, Cambodian, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
definitely.
I think
Yeah,
that plays a big part in us, being able to clearly self-identify who we want to be, taken as. And then, it goes from there. Because if we allow the government to dictate what what we're classified as, they would do that. They could easily do that in a way in which isn't beneficial to a certain group or whatever.
exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So
Yeah, no, self-identifying is definitely more effectively characterizing the community in which you live, and it helps distribute those resources
for sure,
that certain like races need,
for
just
sure,
like you were saying.
for sure, definitely.
It's definitely more effective.
Definitely, and I believe that how you guys were talking about identifying somebody, like they might consider themselves a certain race, but you might not consider them that. And all the self identity thing is how people act and how they dress. A lot of people they can look like one thing, but they can be a totally different person. But because people see you as that, that's the way they're gonna view you, and that's the category or race that they're gonna put you in. So it's all about how you view yourself and how you portray
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of implications around that and why it makes sense for people to be able to self-identify. And a lot of that has to do with making sure that things aren't biased and things are is
Definitely.
the playing field's
Accurate.
level. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So yeah.